Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to the No Fatwas Given podcast. I'm your host Saad with my co-hosts Fahad and Suhaib. All right, it's been an unfortunate break. We kind of paused for Ramadan because things are super busy in Ramadan. And then to get restarted, I moved house. Lots of stuff happened. Alhamdulillah, one of us had a baby. And yeah, we're trying to get back to it. So, first topic on the docket is, of course, what happened during Ramadan and afterwards is these new trade wars and the tariffs that Trump has placed on pretty much every country out there, including apparently territories of our own, which doesn't really matter, I guess, honestly.
Penguins.
Yeah, uninhabited islands. Yeah. And yeah, what do you guys think?
I mean, the overall thing from this is like there's essentially everybody's been talking about like the Trump tariffs and stuff. So I just want to talk a positive aspect somebody has heard recently was that this is essentially part of his book Art of the Deal. Okay, so Art of the Deal basically he says be absurd and obnoxious, right, in the initial dealing, and then scale it back. So not saying this is what his plan was or anything else, but in a way you could look at it where he's being absurd. He put crazy tariffs on everybody across, and then everybody kind of panicked a little bit. Obviously, China fired back, but that's just China. And then some people are saying, again, even the people themselves, they were like saying this is not any way of praising Trump, but maybe if you want to give Trump any credit, maybe it's because he's going to do something obnoxious like this and then walk it back to 10%, and everybody suddenly is at 10%.
I mean, the counter to that was, well, they'll always defend Trump no matter what he does. Oh, tariffs, oh, yeah, it's great for America. And then he walks them back, art of the deal.
Yeah,
and then,
exactly.
And then he does that again. But the problem is, these tariffs are huge, right? They have far-reaching international consequences, and you can't just willy-nilly just propose tariffs and then not do tariffs. And if you're a big company, if you're a big retailer, if you're a big automotive thing, you need to figure out, okay, do I order parts from this place anymore or do I not? Because then the tariffs come and then they go and then they go and they come again and they go up higher, double, triple. How do I make any decision? Do I hire any more people? Of course, I'm not going to hire until I know what I'm doing. I don't want to grow. So for like a good month, people have been stagnation. Layoffs have started to happen, in fact. And now we're hearing that all the tariffs have been paused for 90 days except for China. April 16th, we went up to 245% proposed tariffs against China, which I heard that I'm like, that's impossible. That is not going to happen. And that's precisely the case.
Is 245 or 145 right now?
245
It's
was
like
proposed.
183 or something right now, right?
245% was proposed on April 16th. That was the headline. And right now it's 145. And now Trump is saying that, okay, no, we're going to walk it back further. It's just a mess. Nobody knows what to expect. The market's gone crazy. I don't know if you guys have been in the market. It's been terrible. Thank God I'm not in it right now.
Yeah, I'm all cash right now since the house purchase. But yeah, look, my general thing on this in the trade wars, again, without being a hardcore economist, but it's just in general, free trade is better, meaning when there's less restrictions to trade, right? Commerce flows, we get to buy items from China without issue, from Canada without issue. It's not like, and you mentioned it's China who kind of counter tariffed us. A lot of people did. I think France did, Canada did. Canada put in an equivalent tariff on
They did
our products.
125%, I think, counter tariff.
Yeah, and so everyone's basically tariffing. I mean, everyone's tariffing America back, basically, or just about everyone. And the end result of that is like who's exporting more, who's importing more. We can get into some of those economics, but I don't really want to. But the idea is this surely doesn't help anyone, right? It's not like we were losing some massive trade war. America does have the biggest GDP in the world by far. We are the largest consumer in the world as well. Which, and then, we had these debates with our younger brother and stuff where it's like, if America tariffs China, America is basically China's biggest buyer of goods.
Yeah.
China's biggest export is to the United States. So now, if the United States tariffs them, and now we buy less goods from China, then who gets hurt more? Do we get hurt more because everything in America is made in China and now everything's price goes up? Or do they get hurt more because now, entire factories are going to shut down and lots of things like that, right? So
I don't think, the thing is, yes, GDP, like just overall gross consumption wise, U.S. is the greatest. But there's a lot more emerging economies now, like quite a few, like Brazil. Like there's a lot of emerging economies across the world, and unlike America, China actually has a foothold in South America. There's a foothold, complete foothold in Africa, right? Even now, they're getting inroads with European states, where due to these tariffs and everything else, people are thinking of switching over to Chinese manufacturing and stuff like that, due to the tariffs that the U.S. is being putting on Europe, and so now they're making trade deals with China. So it's how much can the Chinese economy be hurt? And China itself is not a small economy, right? They themselves consume a lot of their own products, and they have been economically strengthening over time. And so how much of it can they burden where they could withstand this pressure from America and leverage all the inroads they've made with the rest of the world?
So the argument is not how much China can get hurt, right? The whole reason they put in the tariffs is there's two reasons. One is they want to eventually replace income tax by making a ton of money through tariffs. And the second thing is they want to onshore manufacturing jobs back into the US, not just in North America, like as in Canada and Mexico. They want those jobs back too. China, Mexico, anywhere they want the jobs back in America. Now the problem is if you have a shotgun approach where you just all of a sudden ramp up tariffs like no tomorrow, 245%, 145%, whatever, you're not going to get the jobs back immediately. It takes many years to make factories, to figure out the supply chain for rare earth minerals, which China started to block. All these things take a lot of time. So what you're going to have right now, immediately, is insane short-term pain. You're going to have recession, jobs lost. In fact, the data on the ground is that manufacturing jobs are actually getting lost right now in the US instead of being
China
generated.
as well. China, actually, there's certain companies that are shutting down, but China's always already had an intense internal competition. Look at the electric car company. It's like intense competition within China, in which BYD rose to the top.
Yeah,
right?
BYD is doing great regardless of the
what's happening
American
here.
consumer market, right? They're doing better than Tesla right now. So, but again, it's not about hurting China. It's actually, well, at least the argument from the Trump administration is to make so much
Is
money.
grow us.
It's
Yeah.
to grow us. It's America first mentality, technically. That we get so much money that we replace income tax. But the problem is you can't really do that. The upper estimates of the benefits you can get from tariffs is you'll make maybe $700 $700 billion a year, which is nothing. Okay? We make trillions from income tax. There's no way we can replace income tax with tariffs.
Well, you're not going to replace it completely, but you're going to offset the income tax reductions by tariffs. Is the idea, is my understanding, right? So if you increase tariffs by 30, 40%, and now our income from tariffs has gone from, I'm gonna make up random numbers, but from 500 billion to now, I don't know, 1 trillion, now we can offset $500 billion worth of income taxes. So maybe you can lower everyone's income taxes by a couple percent or whatever the equivalent is. I think that's the plan, but here's the thing, that's gonna be far out. And at the end of the day, consumers like us will still end up eating the cost in markups, right? So it's not like, so fine, let's say we reduce the tariffs go up by 500 billion, we reduce income tax on average by 500 billion, and now we're all gonna save more money. If you're one of those who spends less, basically those who consume more end up losing more in this because cost of goods is gonna go up for sure, especially in the short term, but probably long term as well. I mean, that's what I expect to happen. So at the end of the day, consumers like us, people who are buying electronics, which 99% of which comes from China pretty much.
Walmart,
Yeah.
60% of goods in Walmart are Chinese made.
So basically, if you're buying anything, your prices are about to go up unless manufacturing becomes much cheaper in the US. And we're not even talking a few years. We're talking like a decade before manufacturing hits anything even close to what we're getting out of China.
And the other thing is, when have you ever seen average products go back down in value?
They don't.
They
It's
don't.
sticky.
So
Inflation's
what
sticky.
happens is, because this is a
No,
capitalistic.
they do. We see this all the time.
We're
No,
not
like, for
about
example,
gas
no,
and stuff is different, but
gas is different. But I'm saying like for example, SSDs. This was like I'm talking like almost 10 years ago. SSDs prices went through the roof because I think some hurricane whatever hit like Japan or something like that, one of the bigger factories in Thailand, whatever it was, and everything shut down because WD and Seagate and all these companies who were working out of there just shut down. Micron prices went through the roof, and then once factories got restarted, the chaos after disaster, settled down, prices came back down. As they do. And this happens all the time. People are like, oh, expect SSD prices to do this. Was happening again recently. Expect hard drive and SSD prices to go up again. So if you want stuff, you want RAM, buy it now. You want this, buy it now. Now's a good time. And slowly but surely, you do see prices go from $50 for 32 gigs to 60, 70, $80 for 32 gigs of RAM. We see this all the time.
But with technology, that's also because technology gets better, cheaper to manufacture, larger scale production. There's a lot of other things that are taken into account.
I'm saying across the board. This
No,
was
but
the era of
see,
SSD, even
So
hard drives.
what you're saying is a supply deficiency causing a price increase, and when the supply increases, the prices go back down. I'm not talking about supply deficiency. There's no supply deficiency happening right now. It is literally just the cost going up. Stuff that just the cost goes up, capitalism rarely brings it back down. Why would they? If they see the sale is the same, why would they bring it back down?
Well, I would say because competition. No, because okay. Now I'm talking theoretically. Maybe we haven't seen this much. Maybe you're
we
right.
don't have
but-
competition if you've tariffed everybody else.
No, if you have tariffed everybody else, but then if they bring them out, basically now here's what happens. So now if China has 135%, 185%, whatever the tariffs are right now, right? And so now in order for them to be competitive in the U.S. market, they have to bring down their price to the U.S. market even lower. And you know what? China could probably manage to do that and still be competitive with U.S. made products. You know what I'm saying? So long as there is still a market, meaning goods can come in from China, even if the tariff, now China just has to beat us plus 185%. Has to beat us by a larger margin, meaning production, and be able to make a profit off of that.
Well,
Which
we're not
may
producing
happen.
anything.
Yeah,
So.
we're talking long term. But anyway,
The other issue is they kept talking about how they're going to get a lot of trade deals done. So the whole art of the deal thing where, oh, we're going to slap you with tons of tariffs and now you're going to strike a deal. You're going to give us a pound of flesh. Give us your natural gas resources. Give us your nuclear resources. Give us rare earth. Nothing happened. In fact, they had already a deal with Japan recently when Trump took office. And then they decided to basically destroy that deal and be like, hey, we have tariffs on now. Let's make a new deal. And Japan said, no. How can we trust you to stick to your own deal when you just scrap that one and make a new one? Why? And so they're getting destroyed. And so there's no solid trade deal that's emerged, even though that was a big claim that was being made. He's paused all the tariffs. And now even with China, he's backing down because China's not budging and China's saying, no, screw you. We'll restrict all the rare earth minerals that you need.
but it's like everyone hurts from this. Now, who wins at the end? Who knows?
Japan
I'm saying if it
Japan
continues.
actually got hurt pretty bad, especially because their auto industry's got 25% tariff, and the U.S.
Japanese
takes a
cars.
significant amount. I think here it
Honda and
says
Toyota.
20%.
Yeah.
20% of the Japanese manufacturing. So it actually just hurts a lot of their allies. Japan is a long-term ally, and it's just hurting them.
It's funny because Scott Bessent, the Treasury
Yeah.
Secretary, he came out and said yesterday that, oh, America first does not mean America alone. You know, we'll take care of our allies too, is about more collaboration, something like that. Some weird contradictory messaging coming out from what they're doing and what's actually happening. I think they're really out of touch. Honestly, it's just whatever Trump decides on the day. It's literally that's what's going on.
It
Even
seems like
Elon doesn't really have his ear right now. Nobody really has his
But
ear.
he backed up now. He's not even leading Doge anymore, right?
He
Yeah,
backed up,
because
yeah.
Tesla's dying.
Tesla's done.
lost 70% of its profits. 70%.
That's crazy.
It's insane.
Well,
Because of tariffs
Cybertruck was
or
a
what?
flop. Cybertruck was a flop due to
It just looks ugly,
just
apparently. So.
yeah. I
It is
guess.
ugly. No, it was,
think
just,
it's
it was
decent.
bad. No, manufacturing is bad. People are having quality issues. Like,
Yeah, they're having a lot of
there's
issues. with
Quality
Tesla.
issues?
yeah.
And I think there's just bad press around him right now, just mainly because he also joined.
They're
a lot.
burning his cars.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad press around him. So there's that.
But it's one of those things where I think burning cars doesn't hurt them. I think burning cars helps.
But this tariff stuff actually affected us already with the Switch.
Did it?
Yes, it did. So
It released on time, no?
No, it didn't.
the original price of the Switch that Nintendo was going to sell it for, they stayed the same. The Switch console and the bundle. But every single accessory went up by $5.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
And the pre-order date, so initially the pre-orders would open I think on April 9th or something like that. April 9th pre-orders for Nintendo Switch were going to open with the release on June 5th. The release time didn't change. But once the tariffs were actually kicking into place, Nintendo in the US and Canada, basically North America as a whole, they stopped their pre-order date of April 9th. And they finally opened pre-orders basically today, midnight, early this morning, because of the uncertainty of tariffs. it ended up not changing the price of the console. And I think most
Not
probably,
console, just accessories.
yeah, it only changed.
Including
But
the
I'm
game?
saying it did not change the price of the console.
I
But I think
don't think it changed
because
the
of
game
pushback.
prices, but it just changed all the accessory prices.
No, but because of pushback though. Mostly because when the console came out, I'm pretty certain when the console came out, everyone's like $450 is too much for again a console with graphics from yesteryear, right? This is not a high-end console. It is just not. It's just it's literally a Switch 2 in every sense of word. It's a phone. It's a phone processor in a thing, and now the competition is even fiercer. You could have said that maybe Nintendo could have charged $450 for the OG Switch potentially because it's unique form factor, yada yada yada. But now there's things like the ROG Ally, the Steam Deck, of course, Lenovo, the Legion Go, and all those kind of things. There's a bunch of products out there that are way more powerful than the Switch and Switch 2. And so people are like, that's probably one reason why they didn't increase
Well,
the cost of
Nintendo is
console.
notorious for never decreasing the prices on their games. You could buy it right now today, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe
For 60
for
bucks.
like $60.
Yeah.
They don't decrease their top game prices ever. But either way, for Nintendo, I think it's kind of a industry standard. They take a loss on their consoles. Nintendo is the one company, starting I forgot which era, they decided never to take a loss on their consoles. Everybody else takes a loss. So I think they were like, okay, let's just keep it the same. We were already kind of charging high. They're probably still making money potentially, and so
100%.
so they're like, okay, let's just keep it because ultimately the way these companies make money is through selling their games, right? Their app store, right? And Nintendo this time is doing a big change where their digital games cost significantly less than their physical games, like about $5 to $10 cheaper. I forgot what the number is right now, but $5 to $10 cheaper if you buy a digital versus physical.
I think it was $10.
Isn't it better just get digital? Why would you get physical?
A lot of these collectors and stuff, people are they
No,
want digital.
there's a couple things. One is to own it because when the eShop dies, it's gone. You literally
When
lost
is
all
the
your
eShop
games.
dying?
It does. For
It
example,
does.
the
For
3DS.
all- 3DS
For
is
example,
died.
3DS is gone. For the Wii is gone. You can no longer buy like titles for the Wii or whatever it is, right?
They have a shut that down date.
Okay.
Which means also, if you have previously purchased a digital game, if you don't already have it downloaded, you can't download it again from the eShop. The eShop's dead.
So people like, I want to actually own my games. They always buy physical copies. One, because you can stack it in a shelf. It just looks nice. Collectors, right? But the other problem, yeah, you own it. It's mine. I have a physical copy. This is mine. No one can take this away from me. And what there's another controversy is now they're releasing cartridges that are like download
They've
cartridges.
been doing this for a while, but essentially,
That's weird.
your cartridge is just a CD key.
Oh.
And then you just put it in, and it gives you the license to download the game.
Well, that's
And
lame.
but the problem
that's so
is,
stupid.
you still need that cartridge in the entire time you're playing the game.
Oh, that's terrible.
It is terrible. It's just the worst case. So even if the eShop closes down, that cartridge never had the game to begin with.
But on a bright note, they did release sharing of games. Made it even better before. So now you can share a game with a person, I think for like 2 weeks or something, a week or 2 weeks, just online. You don't have to be next to me, I think.
Oh.
Or maybe you have to be next to you?
No. So there's two ways
can't
of
remember.
sharing. So one is within the family group. Within the family group, you can share games.
A big family group.
Big family group. Well, there's like pretty generous, anyways. They have like
Yeah.
10 slots or something. So within the family group, you can completely share games. Like you could just say like, okay, let somebody else play, whatever it is. But within your local wireless connection, internet. So if two or within local wireless networking, whatever, if two switches are next to each other, you could just share the game. So if I have Mario Kart and other people want to play with me, they're all allowed to play.
No. I'm talking about two things. You're talking about that's local, that's network play. That's different. I'm saying I could loan you my digital game.
Yes, you can do that.
I can do a full loan, meaning I give you my digital game. I can no longer play it.
You can't
until you
oh.
return it back
No,
to
but
me,
that
or I cancel
that's
your
only the
thing.
family plan. Right now, the way we do it.
No. It's anybody. If you, my friend, we don't share a family plan. If you, my friend, comes over, and I'm not sure if we both need to have a Nintendo Online thing, I can literally do a digital, like Blockbuster style. I can digitally share a game with you for up to a limited number of time. You have to be online during the initial exchange, and then you can even play it offline, is my understanding, for up to a week or something, and then basically your rent from your friend expires. This is separate from what you're talking
That's
about.
so cool.
Yeah.
It's like
No,
a
it is
little
good.
economy.
But what's interesting though is right now the way we share games is we just basically have everybody's profile on every single Switch. I have
Yeah.
your profile, so if you bought a game specifically, but I can only play it through your profile.
Yeah.
Now with this, you can play it through your own profile. I just have to give you the game as a
That's
I
even
can let you
better,
borrow,
dude.
which is nice. That means you play on your own profile and you're not playing.
But
on other
It
for-
is
folks.
because you're getting their saves too. Because what's happening is because your online profiles on mine, your entire cloud saves is on mine, and the kids go on, they change your like stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot.
crazy.
Yeah. So it's nice that you're allowed to actually share.
But for local sharing, it's limited to just 4. You can share with 3 more consoles at a time, right?
I think it's 4 people, but it's just like 3DS download. If you ever use DS,
but,
back
but
then,
the
it's like
DS,
download
but the
play.
DS you could share with more people, right?
Up to 8, I think.
I'm sure you can do more.
This is
maybe.
up till 4.
I think
It's
it's
up
up
to
to
4?
4. I
I
believe
think,
so.
there's
But you can have
limitations.
2 Switches and have 8 people playing the same
Sure,
game
sure.
together, potentially, and only 2 people own it. But it's like I think it's like 4 people per single game. I think you're right.
Yeah.
But that's really cool too, because people can bring their Switch over, and you can play a game that I own, they don't, with them on their Switches, which is always cool.
The nice thing is now there's complete compatibility, right? And now Nintendo has a proper eShop where everything I owned on the Switch can be downloaded and played on the Switch too. My entire thing
I find it
transfers.
hard to believe that they would ever
Almost.
phase out the Nintendo current shop.
They're
No,
actually
they
not.
finally did because Xbox and these people have been doing forever. Like your ownership of games on 360 continues till this day, right? Or earlier. But Nintendo didn't, right? The Wii U, whatever you bought on the Wii U, died with it. Whatever you bought now it's continuing, right? Now Switch to Switch 2, your entire eShop account stays, which is great.
Yes, and I think people are saying because the audience for the Switch is so huge, they're actually going to keep releasing titles and stuff for the Switch if they can. Because why alienate the audience right now when they have like 200 million consoles out there, which is insane.
Especially if
200 million?
Something like that, yeah.
they are, I think they're second most console sold or third.
After the DS or something like that.
They're no, I think the PS2 is the most.
No, but I don't even think it's the most sold Nintendo console. I think the DS outsold this. I'm pretty sure. DS and all its variations.
Yeah, let me just look that up. But yeah, I think Switch is very close on the heels. And the idea is it's a family. Like I could play a game on my Switch with a Switch 1 user, Switch 2 with a Switch 1 user, as long as both games are compatible on both consoles.
Here it is. PlayStation 2, released in 2000, sold 160 million. Nintendo DS, 154 million. Nintendo Switch, 150 million.
Okay.
So I was around about 200, but yeah, it's a lot.
I remember the PlayStation 2 days. Everybody had a PS2.
You know,
Even in Pakistan.
I feel like I missed that completely because we had a GameCube.
Oh, in Pakistan, everybody had a PS. I didn't have a PS2. I had,
You know why people have PS2?
Xbox. which is
Easier to
great.
hack. And
It's easier to hack.
Yeah.
The whole world was buying them.
Oh, Baiji had hacked the Xbox, no problem. But
Yeah.
I didn't have a PS2.
Yeah, PS2 was like apparently you could literally hack it. Like you could copy CDs directly on the PS2.
No, you don't copy CDs on it. But what it did is you could remember this was initial PS1. I'm not sure if it's on PS2, but
Okay.
the way you could have things go is you could actually have a bootleg CD. So you can copy CDs, of course. You can always have done this. But every CD had its own little, on the inner ring, that had this little imprint, basically, of like copyright protection, basically. So they knew if it's a fake CD or not, which is why we had no CD hacks, remember, on the PC?
Yeah.
And so this was the hack from the PS1. I'm just going to talk about this because it was fascinating. They would copy it on their PC, a copy of the CD, but you can't just run the game from the CD. The PlayStation PS1 would know that this is a bootleg copy of the game. So what you would do is there was a specific hack. As soon as you see the PlayStation logo, you eject, and you put the real CD in, or you can put this is the time. You have the original CD in. As soon as the PS1 logo comes, you eject. It pauses right there because it knows you ejected the CD. You pop the new one because it used to be just a little flip hood, and you actually put the whole CD on, like a disc track. You put it in, and then you close it, and maybe you have to do this one more time, but basically then it would know. You just have to get it past the check right before it started reading game content, and boom.
I see the point of that, but what's the point if you actually had the real CD?
No, because you would set it up. No, it's just like, remember Super Nintendo or whatever? You keep the game cartridge on because you couldn't save and you would leave it there forever. Once you reset the console or the light goes out or something, it's gone. So basically, you can play the game forever, just don't turn off your console. That was the idea.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
That's.
So anyway, on that note, how long do you think it'll take for the Switch 2 to get hacked?
Oh, probably pretty quick. I mean, this is too
Switch got
big a
hacked pretty
community.
quick.
The Switch, the OG Switch got hacked, I would say, within like
2-3 years?
6-7 months.
6-7 months.
It was known. We knew that the hacker community was working on it almost immediately. Within 6-7 months,
With the
I'm pretty
Joy-Con
sure,
hack, right?
Yeah, within 6-7 months, it was hacked, but it wasn't released. And then someone on the scene, everyone was like, "Oh, it's hacked, but we're not going to release this." And they have proof. People posted videos on Twitter or whatever showing that they hacked it and they're running Linux on their Switch or whatever. And they're like, "Okay." And then someone just somehow, one of the developers who were working on this released it to everybody. And then the developers were angry, saying, "Look, this is too soon." That's why they're like, "We're going to release this eventually. This is too soon." But it turns out one of the reasons that someone just released it is because the what's the company that they're going to release a paid version of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna release a paid version of it because they already had their hack and it was slightly better in some ways, more developed. Like you can play like custom ROMs and all that stuff on it. And so they're like, okay, let's just push it out. And then eventually that company they pushed their version out. And here's the thing, theirs was better. I used both. It
Really?
worked. Yeah. So
Anyways, last night we
Anyway.
all got the Switch, which was
Pre-orders.
it was interesting because I don't think this has ever happened before. It was much harder to get it. Somehow, like these sites like Walmart, and then they had actually Walmart and Best Buy had nice. Actually, Walmart had the best.
Target's was the worst.
Target was the worst. Target you had to keep
It
refreshing.
was out in 1 minute.
Yeah.
Well, and it would let you do it, then you had to enter the credit card.
No, it would stock and restock. Basically, like I remember the first 10 seconds, I clicked it, and then it said sold out immediately. This is I'm talking like 30 seconds in.
And
And
then
then-
pause for prayer. I think it's 1:30.
Yeah, we should pause for it.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, we're back off of the Hosala. So just to finish the topic we were talking about last time, and then we got to talk about Douglas Murray on against Dave Smith on the Joe Rogan podcast. But we all basically, me and all our extended family, were able to get our Nintendo Switches, which is kind of remarkable considering what's been happening in the world. But yeah, Walmart did a pretty good job about their queue. Best Buy also,
had a queue.
yeah, had
Best
a nice
Buy had a
queue.
queue.
No, Walmart did too.
Walmart did too. You just clicked it and said, "Hey." And
Walmart
Walmart's
actually
was
worked better. Walmart, as soon as you were ready, it would just take you to the screen to purchase it. It would actually give you a notification. You have like 9 minutes to purchase it. Best Buy.
If you left the screen, it was donezo, and you could be on the screen for 30
You mean the
minutes.
mobile app or the desktop?
Desktop and mobile.
Both.
The mobile didn't have any 9-minute wait thing.
It did.
It just showed up in my cart, but I couldn't actually check out because I would go to check out and say, "Oh, this is
For Walmart?
Oh, I think you just did too late. It was already done by then.
Yeah, probably no. Because
Not
for
just
Walmart,
that,
the
not just
website
that.
looked the
Before
same, though.
9 p.m. I would try to go on the link and it would just say, "Sorry, there's a technical error." Technical error. Technical error. Even
before
after
9,
9.
well,
Before 9
it
and
was-
after 9. Technical error.
I don't know. It worked for us.
it worked for us like a charm. All of us.
No, it didn't.
Ahmed, me, mine. And then, in fact, who ended up purchasing for us is we came to Isha. It was 9:30. We came here for Isha prayer. And then my wife is the one who got the message because I was doing it on her phone as well. She got the message and she purchased for me. I thought I didn't have one when I got home.
Yeah,
Turns
so
out
you
we
don't have
got
to
the
like
pre-order.
pay attention the whole time. And Best Buy worked the same way. The only problem with Best Buy was it would just tell you to log in right away again as soon as it would show an error. You would log in and it's like, okay, you're ready to purchase.
Yeah, Walmart didn't work for me at all. It was a technical error.
But you got Best Buy.
It got it. Well, I didn't get anything. He got it from me.
I got
Oh,
it
you
one
got it
from
from
Best Buy
him,
from you. So I got
That's
two technically. But anyway, really cool stuff. Pretty excited. It's gonna come out June 5th. And maybe some of the online features might be cool. Especially I'm thinking if our kids ever play together, but that'd be nice. All right. Next topic. Most interesting topic. Now we're a little bit late to this to the discussion, but about 2 weeks ago, I think Dave Smith appeared on Joe Rogan's podcast. And then after that discussion, like within 2 days, Joe Rogan invited him back so he can have a debate on Joe Rogan on his own podcast against Douglas Murray. Now, Dave Smith, he is a comedian. He is Jewish by heritage, hasn't been to Israel. This will come up later. And he was there on kind of one side, you can say Palestinian side, where he's kind of the humanitarian there. And then there's Douglas Murray, who's basically a Zionist shill. Right, all he does, he's been on debates on in Britain and whatnot before, where he just basically says, the short of his shtick is, and he doesn't mention this during the podcast at all when they're debating the issue, but the short of his thing is, Israel's the most maligned country in the world. No one, there's a double standard. When Israel does something, everyone, pounces on them for killing even a single innocent person when the world's been doing this forever. That type of thing, right? Where they're the victim. Israel's the victim here. And then, of course, Dave Smith takes look, yeah, Hamas is bad. They commit a terrorist attack. It doesn't mean you go wipe out the whole nation, right? Which is, I think, pretty common sense here. And so that, to give you a little background, the whole thing starts. This 2.5-hour podcast starts with 45-minute discussion on just why Joe Rogan's a bad person because he has more, pro-Palestinian people on than pro-Israeli. And then he talks about how he should have more experts on, and that these non-experts like Dave Smith and Ian Carroll and Daryl Cooper, can't remember, are all these non-experts who talk a lot about things they have no knowledge about. And then Joe Rogan goes, wait, so if you're not an expert, you can't talk about this? And his sponsor, oh no, you can, but, and then
5 minutes later.
5 minutes later, but you're not an expert. And you say that you're a comedian, but you're not an expert. And anyway, complete nonsense. And Joe Rogan's only supposed to be a moderator, but he pretty much attacks Joe Rogan right in the beginning. So Joe Rogan's like,
I mean,
Like what?
the Zionist play is obviously, throw out a bunch of lies. Hopefully one of them sticks. And the other thing is to shut down any counter narrative or counter argument by
appeals to authority, basically.
by a appeals authority saying you're not an expert or some other, but mainly expert, right? Oh, they're not an expert. You shouldn't listen to them. Oh, they haven't been there. Some nonsense like that. He talks about China and stuff, and this guy hasn't been to a lot of these places where he talks about, right? He talks about a bunch of. He's a political commentator, right?
He's an English major, yeah.
Yeah, and he talks about a lot. First of all, he's an English major.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of expert is he? And then he talks about a lot of places which he himself hasn't been.
Yeah, no, and this came up later. So the first 45 minutes was just this. And later on, they're having discussion. They try to get in the nitty gritty because eventually Joe Rogan even kind of reprimands him and say, hey, you got to let the other person speak. And so they were both having the most civil discussion you've ever seen when things are probably going to get really heated really quickly. Because, like, you see Joe Rogan's face. One of the guys is a physical presence. The guy's like jacked, right? He knows Taekwondo. The guys are one of the craziest back kicks you've ever seen. And then he's just like, no. And he has a super serious face. You got to let him speak. Otherwise, we can't have a discussion. And then they're both just let the other person speak. Man, I got to say, like, once he said that, like, that discussion became so civil so quickly. It was crazy. And then, but long story short, they start talking about the blockade and checkpoints and stuff like that. And he goes, well, when's the last time you've been there? Like, Douglas Murray says this to Dave Smith. And he's like, I've never been.
You haven't been?
You haven't been? You've never been there? I mean, if you're going to talk about a place, at least have the courtesy of going there. He says, I don't have a policy of not even talking about a place unless, even in passing, unless I've been there. And it's like, you talk about Iran, you talk about China, you talk about all these places. You've never been to Iran. You haven't been to North Korea.
And what kind of dumb critique is that? Like, if you haven't been there, you can't talk about it.
And Dave Smith's like, so now, because I haven't been there, I can't talk about it? He's like, well, it's nonsense.
And he says clearly, that's a non-argument.
It's a non-argument. And what's funny, the crazy part about that particular comment is like, Joe Rogan was interviewing on Tim Dillon or some other comedian on that show. And it came up where Tim Dillon was saying something about the whole issue, and he's like, his opinion. He's like, but wait. And Joe Rogan goes, wait, hold up. But have you been? You haven't been there? This is hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. But like, such nonsense.
No, but what's interesting is the Zionists, I don't know, they're blinded to what's happening, or they just have their one playbook and it doesn't matter what, they just run with it without any consequences. But overall, it's hurt them. This entire interaction with Joe Rogan, what hurt them, because even the host himself, who is the most likable person on the show, he is Joe Rogan from the Joe Rogan podcast. He's making fun of you the next episode. So optics-wise, that guy lost. Mm-hmm. Forget the argument. Optics-wise, he just lost completely. And most of what they do is not reasoning anyways. It's optics. They try to get you by optics. And they fail miserably even on that front.
I mean, optics is ultimately super important. Even if you look at it from a Dawa standpoint, right?
Yes.
We're encouraged, like, you might have the perfect argument, which you do. You have the truth with you. But if you're not presenting it in a nice way, if you're being condescending, if you're being annoying, bratty, whatever, doesn't matter what your argument was or what your message was.
Also, how you carry yourself, how you look when giving dawah. That's why the prophets all were good looking. Every single prophet was good looking. Even Musa as when they would criticize his body, then there was a hadith where his entire body was shown when he left the lake. So he had a perfect body, right? In every aspect, the prophets were visually presentable
always,
because you need that aspect to give dawah, right?
Amr ibn As said he saw the Prophet Muhammad's face, and then a full moon just right behind him. And he said his face, especially Arab culture, like the full moon is one of the most beautiful things. And he says his face was more beautiful than the full moon. And this is another man, obviously, right? So, and his wife said the same thing. She's like, obviously, wives may be biased, but they said the same thing about him, where she's like, no, he would be more beautiful than even Yusuf alayhi salam, stuff like that. But yeah, they were handsome men. And to put it short, just simply on this topic, I thought it was very interesting. Ottoman Empire, there's this little, the Ottoman Empire they had like a. On the classifieds, whatever you call it, an ad out. They're looking for a grand imam, okay? And one of the things was they have to be a full scholar in hadith and this, like all the Islamic principles, and they have to be basically like doctorate level in physics, in chemistry, in mathematics, all these qualifications in order to be a grand imam. And then the last thing is what? And of handsome countenance. Literally, it's like
You know,
so,
it's very
yeah.
important actually. Actually, it's very
They've done
important.
studies on this where they'll have a handsome police officer come in and point at the wrong person who committed the crime and say, "I think it's this person," and they'll have an ugly police officer come in and say and point at the real criminal and say, "I think it was this person," and people who were eyewitnesses, like they would more of them would change their opinion to go from the true culprit that they saw, the eyewitnessed it, to the person the handsome person thought might have been the culprit because they're handsome. And this is why pretty people, pretty women, stuff like that, they get a lot of things in life. Is because not just for women, but for men and women both, being pretty, being beautiful, just makes you more convincing.
It's part of your risk, ultimately.
Yeah.
It's part of the risk. Yeah, it is.
Anyway, it's fascinating stuff. But this argument was completely nonsensical, and it was hilarious to watch. And speaking of optics, though, and it showed how the mainstream media, like anyone who saw this podcast, knew how it went. Like you just knew. All the mainstream headlines. Douglas Murray basically ripped Joe Rogan a new one, right? He finally put Joe Rogan in his place and showed him who's boss, and everyone's like, "What
No.
podcast did you see?"
Exactly.
Like, if anyone who saw that would not come away with that conclusion, there's no way. There's no way.
Yeah. Which is essentially just exposing more and more to people the control the scientists have on media and certain aspects of society, and ultimately that bubble is bursting. Right? We have these shows, and the crazy thing is Joe Rogan is not a small personality himself. Like he's somebody very much the designers have probably tried buying, just like they bought Jordan Peterson.
Do you know how much damage control is happening
PBD.
right now?
and stuff. Yeah.
So
PBD,
Douglas Murray, after that, went to Ben Shapiro's podcast,
Well,
went to Sam Harris's podcast, and wrote a New York Post
Column.
op-ed. Is just all over, and now Jordan Peterson starting to defend him on Joe Rogan. There's just so much damage control trying to happen.
yeah,
right now
Jordan
because of
Peterson,
that.
another
It was
Daily
quite damaging.
Wire shill.
You saw that? What happened recently with Jordan Peterson? Start crying and.
Well, he
What
always cries.
happened? Oh, I don't.
Apparently,
I'm
he
not
went on
surprised.
Piers Morgan. I didn't watch it. I didn't watch his Piers, but apparently he went on Piers Morgan and he just broke down in tears, talking about I don't know what he was talking about. And then my wife said that Piers Morgan looked uncomfortable, like dealing with this grown teary man. Like, anyway,
No, so I mean the thing
How
is
they
the
fall.
problem is that right now I saw a clip. It was some like Muslim podcast kind of showed that Jordan Peterson's trying to do damage control for the Douglas Murray and kind of berating Joe Rogan on his own podcast. But essentially he's saying that you're a curious person, Joe Rogan. You yourself said you invite people because of curiosity, right? And he said that's admirable, but he says with such a big platform, don't you have the responsibility of sending the right message? Essentially, curate your people better. Just because you're curious doesn't mean you can get them on. And then he said something about like you have to look at their aim, or right now I'm gonna put a quote up. He cautioned against psychopathic parasites who exploit political causes for personal gain. The thing is, psychopathic parasite.
that's what he called Candace Owens, like on a tweet. Anyway,
How could that fits himself, right? He's a parasite. He's leached onto Daily Wire as a leech, right? And he's psychopathic. He's insane. Like he preaches all these things for bettering men's health and stuff like that. And of course,
which is still good advice.
I'll
Much
tell
of
you
it.
that the mental health of men has degraded so much in the society that anybody reaching out will help them. Okay,
I do
but
think
why
I do
would
think
I
things are
go?
better now.
Why would I go if I'm suffering from drug problems to somebody who's obviously talking about drug addicts and drug issues and might help me out, but he relapses every 3 months. Jordan Peterson, he breaks down and has a mental breakdown every 3 months, right? And he himself talks about therapy and stuff like that. Sure, he goes then between those 3 months, lectures and speaking and helping people out, and then he relapses 3 months later. Why would I want to go to him? Why not go to even one of us? Have you ever had a mental breakdown? Like, have you gone extreme depression, like
I don't
chronic
think
depression?
so.
Right, exactly. Like,
But how do you know you've had a mental breakdown? What
do you mean by
what,
mental?
what do you mean? What do you mean mean? What do you mean mental?
I
What do you mean
have
breakdown?
countless people in my life who are way older than me and who are up to my age. We're like, I'm at 38. They never had a mental breakdown. They were like severely chronically depressed. And you're reaching out to people who are chronically depressed, who relapse every 3 months. It's absurd.
It's not every psychologist has a psychologist, as they say. So that's the way things go. But it's not like all psychologists aren't the same, so I wouldn't paint them all with a broad brush.
Yeah.
But Jordan Peterson, it maybe comes with fame and stuff like that. He had very rapid fame. It was an older age. I think he'd be a deal with it better. But there's drugs. His wife got like a basically a terminal diagnosis of some kind of rare form of cancer. So he was given a year to live. He's going through stuff. I'm not saying he's not, so I'll give him some benefit of the doubt, meaning as far as from his personal life and the things he's going through. Of course, it's going to be stressful. But man, like, me as a fan, I was like a Jordan Peterson fan, and then
I mean,
he
mainly
just fell
because of-
so hard.
Yeah, the only reason you were a fan was because he was speaking out against the trans issue.
Well, yeah, no, of course, no. Here's someone who comes out and speaks for he's religious leaning. I don't know sure if he believes in God, but he's
He doesn't.
religious leaning.
Yeah.
He would kind of speak pro-religion, and he'd be anti kind of atheism. And then he came out and spoke the truth about kind of feminism, the trans issue, these kind of debates. Free speech. You can't, hate. Not everything's hate speech, and hate speech is technically part of free speech. Like, he started saying these things, right? You can't start controlling these things, and then, the tipping point was when he had that discussion with Muhammad Hijab, basically.
One of the discussion, and then he joined Daily Wire. And right now, you
Yeah.
can tell every single appearance of his is he's a shill for the Daily Wire. He's a shill for the Zionist movement, and that's essentially him trying to do damage control for Douglas Murray, right? But everything, even the comments underneath that, I checked it out. They're clearly seeing it. The top comments, right? All you see on YouTube videos is the top comments. Nobody ever is gonna see sort by new.
Yeah.
And the top comments are painting a certain narrative, right? And so they're losing the argument here.
Absolutely.
But I think it's kind of fascinating. But I think
That's good.
we had all our points discussed.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought that was fascinating. And if you haven't seen the Joe Rogan kind of podcast with Dave Smith and Douglas Murray, it's absolutely worth it. I think it's hilarious. Really, more than anything, it kind of shows this whole Zionism game we're talking about. But anyway, that's it for this time. A little shorter episode, but hopefully get back in the swing of things and do this weekly again and with better production quality. We'll get there. But Jazakumullah khair for watching. Please like, subscribe, share, and inshallah we'll see you next week. Assalamu alaikum.